Today, I am on my second episode of The Conversation with Kase, and I am speaking to my fabulous friend, Nicole Mickle. And Nicole has had over 20 years of real estate experience, and she's done everything from mortgages to traditional real estate. She's a top producer out of the Orlando area, and I had the fortunate opportunity to work with her for several years at the same office. And she has built a dynamic and thriving real estate business from social media. So I'm really excited to have her on my show. So, Nicole, welcome.
Hello, Case. Thank you for having me today.
Well, I'm excited. And it was kind of funny because we were on the phone right after I did my first episode. And I was just like, we got into the conversations we typically do, and just kind of around business and life. And I was like, oh my God, we need to have one of these where people can actually hear us.
That's true.
Yeah. So I kind of feel like our friendship was kind of written in the stars a little bit because I remember like the first time I ever spoke to you, and I just kind of like knew from like that moment you were someone like I wanted to be aligned with in business. Do you remember like the first time we ever spoke?
I vaguely remember when you kind of reminded me before, but remember now that was a time that I was kind of flustered and working. I mean, 18, 19-hour days, literally, and not really not didn't know my name. So
Yeah, well, so to give everyone a context, I think it was back in like 2011 or 2012. So we were just coming off of, the market crash. There were a lot of short sales, foreclosures, and so there was this listing that I was trying to get showing instructions to. And I had someone who was very interested in it, and I kept calling the particular listing agent that happened to be associated with a very, very big law firm in the Orlando area that did a lot of short sales. And like no one talked to me. Like I couldn't get anybody on the phone, like no one would respond. And somehow, after going a couple levels deep, I ended up getting you on the phone, and you were just like amazing. Like you answered all my questions, like you were polite and nice. Like there were people I spoke with at that particular organization that were not very nice. And I don't know, like you were just, I saved your number in my phone because I was like, I don't know why she works for this place because she's really good. Like that's what my thought was.
um, I can't say what I really want to say or share, but I will say this. I just wanted to be treat people. I'm a person that wants to treat everybody like I want to be treated.
Right.
And when I started and I was put into that position, I didn't know how people didn't service clients. I just didn't know that. So it was really shocking to me and it was overwhelming at times. But I just wanted to make sure that people understood that I wanted to help them. Everybody was in a sad space at that time. And I just wanted to, kind of bring some happiness to a situation that we really couldn't control.
Right.
Yeah.
And you did. And it showed with how you interacted with me because, to your point, like back then, I just remember so many people lost so much. And I think there were a lot of people in the real estate industry, after that 2008 and 2009 period, who they were so over leveraged, and they were not financially literate. They were just so used to making money hand over fist. And then when they
Yes.
lost all of that, it was like they blamed the whole world for it. And they took it like, I just remember people not being very nice. And I was just so shocked because I was like, I was trying to build a business and I had someone who was very interested in a property, and you were like the only one to like who wanted to help me. And I'm just thinking, how is this particular company like still in business? And they're not any longer, but I was just really glad to connect with you. And it was funny because I remembered our conversation. I saved you in my phone. And then I want to say it was like 4 years later, I was doing a closing when you were at the brokerage prior to Mainframe.
Mhm.
and you were there in the lobby and we ran into each other and I'm like, Nicole Mickle. And like for a second, I'm not sure you were like, who is this crazy guy? Um,
But
so
I did get that afterwards, and I didn't know how much of an impact that I did help people. So it was just really refreshing to see that side, because in real estate, people think of you always just like the competition, and I just never felt that before, earlier in my career, until this side of it. So I just wanted to just be that person that could help. And it was just that simple. It wasn't anything, super complicated, but it seemed to be, as I started to understand the inner links and back end of real estate.
yeah, we talked about that a lot too, just how like some people it's almost kind of obvious where I'm trying to think how to say this the right way. It's very obvious that what their intentions are in business by how they treat other people.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
on that same note, talking about customer service and everything else, I mean, you've had, you've worked in the real estate field doing many different things over, a 20-year plus period. And I know before you got into real estate, you were in mortgages, but what led you to choose traditional real estate kind of as your path? Like what was it that you loved about real estate versus like say doing mortgages?
Well, I have to be honest with you. I never had a path that was ever structured with any of the positions that I've had before. It was always organic. And me coming from short sale was more of a position that I was put into because of a previous client. And then it migrated over as I saw that we had a reduction in short sales, and I started to see different economic factors coming to Orlando. I knew those influences would actually be a benefit. And as I started to do more research, I said it's time for me to kind of come up with a strategy to possibly do sales. But before that, I was licensed the entire time that I was at that law firm, but I did not let anyone know until one of the clients directly called me out, called the manager and a lawyer in the office and said, "Hey, we're going to pull the business if she can't represent us." And that's how I became an agent.
I mean, that's amazing because that's literally a testament to the quality of service you were providing. I mean,
Mm.
and it's funny that it takes those moments for someone to kind of believe in us, for us to like something to kind of
Correct.
click like that.
Yeah, 'cause I was never in my head a realtor. I was like, I'm not a real estate agent. I just do back end work. I just, I facilitated loads of deals during that time, and I was always behind the scenes. And most times I am behind the scenes because it's very comfortable for me. But once I was in that position, and I was like, we were almost to the end of a transaction, and it would have crushed the buyer on that side, and it would have crushed the buyer's agent, because we probably had put into 6 months or 8 months of time to
Wow.
get an approval. So I wasn't going to let anyone down. That's just who I am. And that's when I went ahead and I paid the fees, and I became licensed. And then from there, I knew that we were shifting into a new market, and I wanted to prepare. And by preparing, that's when I started to say, how am I going to sell real estate in a traditional way, and be able to engage in this in a way that I can survive it? Because it was more about that for me.
Well, and to that point, because I do think compared to, and I know a lot of real estate agents across the country, and the one thing that's always been so fascinating to me about your business is, you were going virtual before everybody else was, and even before, everything that happened in 2020. So what was your, you've become very successful with Instagram, and we're going to talk about that more a little bit later, but when you made that decision to really jump into retail real estate and knowing that you like to help people, but you didn't want to be like the center of attention, like a lot of agents do, what was your medium? Like, where did you start off with? Like, did you just jump into Instagram, or was it, where did it start?
Okay, so let me backtrack a little. During that time, I had a nationwide notary closing company, and I was kind of forced to understand the internet a little bit more in depth. And that's where I learned how to take my local business nationally in like a couple weeks, using things like Twitter and LinkedIn and just making connections with people. So I did have some experience on the back end of that. So as things would come up, I've always been interested in technology and virtual. That's just like a hobby. I'm a tech
Right.
geek. So from there, I saw Instagram and I was like, oh, this seems cool because I love home decor. And, I was like, and I don't have to really communicate in a stance of just being like professional. It was just more about me doing something that was fun. And I got my best friend on there, and we were like, "Oh, look at this DIY," or "Look at this," and I was like, "Oh, this is really cool." But I had a personal account at that point, and I'm like, "Okay." And then one day, I started to get likes on a page, and I didn't have any friends except for maybe two or three people that personally knew me, and that's when I converted to I may be onto something. I'm not sure, but let me try something out, and that's when I created the name of I Orlando Real Estate. And sure enough, within a couple months, I started to see the interaction and how people were interested in the home decor items. And then from there, I was like, wow, how can I make this something? And then I reverse engineered a lot of agents were doing successful things in real estate, but I wanted to do something that they did not. So it's kind of like, what's the thing that they don't want to do? I want to do. What's the thing that they find difficult to do? I want to do that. And it just kind of started with that. And the one thing I found in my research from talking to really successful agents, they had established farm locations in places that they actually honed and owned. I did not. So I said, well, what are the things that you don't do? And they're like, all this new construction is pissing me off. I hate seeing new construction. And I said, oh, that's what I'm going to do is focus on new construction. And that's what I did.
So I love that, because when I first started, like, one of my early mentors always said to me with real estate, when you see everyone going right, go left. And
Yep.
it goes to,
That's
what I love about your story is that not only were you kind of like pioneering a little bit, but you also took two things that you really liked and you blended them together in such a great way. And I even remember what was funny, like, we've talked about this a couple times, and I even saw it when you were getting a lot of slack from people, other agents, when you were, saying that you were getting business from Instagram. And, I think, from working at the same office with me, I'm kind of a blend of two worlds. I like the traditional real estate and cold calls. I love, sending out mailers and doing that sort of a thing. But then I also love video and high level marketing and, social media like Instagram. But, um, people were just giving you a hard time because you were like, this is the one platform I want. This is my pillar of business and I'm sticking to it. Why do you think so many people gave you such a hard time about that? Even though you were closing things, it's not like you weren't getting any business.
yeah. I think it was the thing of unknown. And I think that's the biggest problem with a lot of real estate agents is they've been told by, high level coaches and brokerages that have done things this way for a very long time. And they're just really want to hold on to that. And when somebody comes along and it says, "Hey, I did something different," it's like, "Shh, we don't want to hear about that. Just be quiet." And I wasn't trying to say, in a way that, "Ooh, look at me." I was just sharing information to people of how it was working because I knew a lot of us were rebuilding. And in rebuilding your businesses, you have to look at other avenues, not to say that they're going to work for you, but to just be open minded. And one thing about me is I'm super open minded, and I'll say, hey, that may not be something I could do, or maybe let me take that and switch it to something else because I did all of the cold calling and Red X and, you know, I tried it. I really did because I felt like, okay, in order for me to be successful, these people who have come before me, they did it this way. But what I found was, luckily, I was in real estate at a time that everything was changing and nothing was about to stay the same. So I had to kind of block out the noise, is what I call it, and just focus and drive in my lane that was working for me.
I'm a real estate coach and I have a team in Atlanta, and a lot of the agents who I work with are typically brand new. And occasionally I will get someone who I give them kind of a structure to work with. And I'm not the type of coach where I'm like, you could only do it my way, and my way is the only, the end all be all. However, there are things that successful agents do that make them a lot of money. But the difference is that I think I want people to take away from what you just said is that you still tried everything, and then you saw an opportunity and you just really focused on it, and then you made it work. It's not like, you just didn't try every avenue, and you did your research.
Yes, and that was the thing too. People think it's just, oh, you're on Instagram, let me post these pretty pictures. There's a psychology behind it as well, because you still need to kind of structure it to understand who you are communicating with, who you want to attract into your business, and those are the things you need to focus on first.
Right.
It's not about the sale. It's about communicating with someone. How would you walk into a dinner party and start to talk to people? Would you open up and say, look at this house I'm selling? Or would you say, hey, I'm Nicole. Who are you? Hey, Case. Oh, okay. So you like architectural design? So do I. So it's these common threads that we kind of throw to the wayside because we want to get to this end goal. And I think with Instagram, it fit my personality because I like to get to know people slowly. I'm not here to just go ahead and be like, hey, it's this way. And I engage with people not because it's a sale. I engage with people because they may have a love of the arts. They may be huge meditators. They may be inspirational components to it. And those are the people, I don't care if they have 3,000 followers or 330 followers. I will still engage with people because of who they are and what they represent.
And that's what I really love about you. I kind of joke, like, you don't know this, but I've always kind of seen you as like the Sia of real estate. Like, you don't, like, you're so behind the scenes. And it's funny, like today, like, you can't see Nicole, but that's because we're having a little technical issue. And it just made me laugh. But you are, because the thing I know about Sia is, she's very, very private. But the people she does connect with, it's because they have that love or interest in common. And it's amazing to me that you were able to take technology and infuse that, and take those elements you normally would have to use in a, like you were saying, at a, like if you were at a dinner table with strangers, and
Hmm.
create a platform around it. I remember one time, I was asking you for some Instagram advice, and you mentioned to me, like, well, you have to think of, your, for example, your focus, and correct me if I say anything wrong, but your focus has really been new construction,
Yes.
Winter Garden, Windermere,
Hmm.
that side of, yeah, that side
Hmm.
of Orlando. And I remember you saying to me, well, if they like to shop at the mall at Millennia, which is a really nice mall in the greater Orlando area, you want to take pictures there and post that to your Instagram, because those people are going to be looking in those areas. They want to basically see online that you're sharing the same common interests. And I thought that was
Correct.
so cool because, in my mind, I was like, well, I could post pictures of homes and locations that I like. And I'm very big in architecture and design. So that part I understood, but I never thought about it going deeper, which was, oh, well, I really need to go to the places where my peeps hang out, because they might
Yes.
see me from there.
Yes. Because when I talk to people, they think it's going to be this big, aha moment that when I'm communicating about their Instagram or kind of doing an audit of it, the biggest thing for them is to understand who they are, what they represent, who they represent, and what their standards are. And once you understand that, you're able to post in a way that's engaging, shareable, and that's what takes off your page. The shareable stuff is what's going to take it off because people want to just be in the space. And that's when I talk to people, they're like, well, you don't show you a lot on the page. And I was like, well, a lot of agents show themselves on the page. And for me, I want to be consumer centric, period. That's it.
Right.
Sometimes the clients want to see what I'm doing. And a lot of times they're saying, thank you for giving me this information because this is the only page I could find the stuff I was researching. And that's why they connect to the page.
I That's so interesting to me because again, I think so many agents come from like this place of ego and they make it like look at me, look at me, look at me. And I will tell you though, like, and maybe it's just because it's my particular audience, but I found that I was getting less followers and less engagement from people when I wasn't posting pictures of myself. And
Hmm.
it
But,
wasn't,
but you're a huge personality, Case. I don't want to cut you off, but you are a huge personality and that needs to be infused. I'm
I,
a huge
I don't see
researcher.
myself that way, but thank you.
Yeah, you're definitely a huge personality. So that needs to be infused because that's who they meet. When they meet me, I mean, I'm engaging, of course, and I crack jokes like anyone else, but they come to me for a quick, and most of my relocation clients, they're coming in for 3 to 4 days. They need me to infuse as much information on them previous to flight time to fly in during the time that we're here and we're under contract typically in 4 to 5 days. So that person is very specific. They don't have time to dance. They're ready to go.
I think what would be challenging for me, because it's funny, I'm really great at helping other people create businesses and brands and think about their consumer. But for me, I don't think I would have gone as far to think like, uh, without seeing like a client or a customer from Instagram, I wouldn't know who to target, if that makes sense. So, like,
Mm,
how did you figure that out?
I wrote down all the things that my client loved to do every day, not just the way they wanted to live, but the way that their lifestyle.
Right.
Did they like to go to the opera? Were they into technology? Were they engineers? Were they coders? What are the things, the nuances of those people that I thought I would connect to based upon what I had interest in? And those interests, based upon what their interests, created the connection. So my first clients from Instagram were relocation, tech. The second one was a coder. The third one was an engineer. And it started to resonate. I'm connecting to the right people. Let me ask them questions. And then I would say, would you want me to come by and pop by your house one day? Or they're like, why would you do something like that? That's weird, Nicole.
So
So, so you have to get feedback from people. You just can't automatically, paint it with a broad stroke and ask. And I was like, hey, I'm really trying to build my business and relocation. Would you mind answering a few questions? Kind of like an exit interview after the transaction. And they were like, oh my, the reason why we selected you is because of this, this, and this. I'm like, what? And it was eye opening to understand that.
that is amazing advice because I think as agents we really don't do enough of that. Like we're great at maybe asking for a referral or
Yeah.
getting a recommendation, but to you're like a constant market researcher basically, and I don't even
Yes.
mean market researcher of just like a neighborhood, but of the
Yes.
consumer
Yes.
because and that makes a lot of sense to me because in my mind I'm like, well, I know the type of people I enjoy working with most, but I don't know like how to really get to them on Instagram. But it sounds like to me you did what anyone would do who's building a brand, and that's just kind of formulating what you think is your ideal customer. And then as
Yes.
you get them, then researching more and learning more about that person. So then you could tailor your efforts differently.
Yeah, because I mean, I love going the extra mile, just like you were saying when we were at the law office and doing short sales. So my service level to someone who's like, I just need you to show me the house. That's not my client. I know that's not my client because I need to make sure I'm sharing what I do best with the people who want the best from me. And one of my clients I connected to, she was the coder who was she coded for different companies internationally, and she was a huge Star Wars Disney fan. And this was the one that was like, I knew I was onto something because she was hard to connect to at times, and she would tell me that. And she said, it's not because I'm not interested, I just don't like fluff. And from there, I told her, I said, we can find that house, but I have a community that's coming up that's going to give you the proximity that you want directly in facing Disney fireworks. And she had found the actual location in the lot that she wanted, but it hadn't been released. So for probably a month and a half, I had to go visit the builder every day, every day, because I live close by. Every day, hey, how you doing? I need lot, whatever it was. I can't remember the exact lot now.
Was
But
this in
that was
Latham Park?
this is that Pulte community that's in Windermere,
Okay, so it's the one that's across from Latham Park. Okay.
down the road.
Yep.
So when I found that lot and I got it for her, she had money ready to wire at any notice. We didn't know what date it was going to be. And then the agent called me and she said, Nicole, today is the day. Get prepared. And we got the lot that she wanted. She built the house that she wanted. And it faced those fireworks like she wanted. But I'm saying somebody else, they were like, that's crazy. Why would you do that? But for me, I just got a jolt from it because I'm like, I was able to get something for my client that I knew not was going to be an immediate satisfaction, but something that was going to be a long term because her love of Disney is what connected her to Orlando. And I wanted to make sure she was taken care
I definitely want to talk about Instagram a little bit more.
of.
One thing I wanted to touch on, which was a huge reason why I wanted to have you on the conversation, was back in 2019, I was interviewed by Orlando Real Producers and I was in the top 35 under 35. And one of the questions had to do with, I can't remember it specifically, but basically it was kind of like what I took out of that year and my business up to that point. And I spoke about how I think what's really important for agents to learn is heart over hustle and kind of creating a life that's more balanced. Because when I was my most successful in my real estate business and my team, I was like completely miserable. And we've talked a lot about that because we both kind of agree with so
Hmm.
many agents. And even although I have seen a change to this with real estate coaches, all it was numbers, how much volume, how much
Yeah.
production.
Hmm.
um, do you think there's too much of a focus in real estate still on like selling the most versus success in creating your ideal life?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I call that noise. I'm not even, it's not up for even conversation with me. I don't want to hear it
Right.
because I feel like, A, when you're serving yourself first and serving your clients and becoming consumer centric, that's going to be the thing that changes everything.
Right.
But when you're constantly caught up on this hamster wheel of chasing the next deal and, oh, I killed it this month and, you know, I'm crushing it. It's like what I heard from clients was, what does that really mean? And I said, what do you mean? "Well, what crushing it? What does that mean? That I'm your next conquest? That I'm your next paycheck?" So
Mm.
when that it kind of resonated with me, and I said, you know what, game on. I'm like completely not listening to any of that because that doesn't feed me. I have to make sure that I'm going in a direction that's going to fuel me to be able to prepare for the day because as you know, real estate is like not predictable. You have to be prepared. And I just feel like the more good that you put out there, the more good is going to come back to you. But structuring it in a way that is going to make you have a happier life is only going to go ahead and benefit the people around you personally and professionally. So 2017 was my year to make that switch.
And what about that year like kind of made you recognize that?
It was Irma right after the hurricane when I said, this is it. And it was after the hurricane, things were crazy. We couldn't get deals closed, especially with me being in new construction. And I said, always just coming up with these different strategies or games is what it felt like to me. I said, I need to be more centered and focused on what's important, myself, my family, and how I'm going to build from that nucleus out. And once I did that, things aligned very differently and fast. That I was able to increase my price point, that I was able to go ahead and work with more relocation. It allowed me to get to know builders and build better relationships with other agents. Meet for lunch once in a while. I never met for lunch. I was too busy getting the next script or, putting these things together that didn't really align with what was truly in my character to flourish. And then once I focus on that, I'm like, this is a business, yes, but I need to make sure that I'm being fed because a lot of times I think the fake rewards and the different accolades that they give you in real estate gives you a false sense of I made it. And the bottom line is you're actually here to serve people. And I think that gets lost in the noise that people just want to be the top agent. And I really wish they would crack down on that because in real estate, I mean, as a mortgage person, you can't say those things legally and get away with it. Like, oh, I'm in the top 2%. And you probably close like 5 deals. That's like false advertisement.
I've seen so much of that. Like,
I'm like, what the? But honestly, when the client told me, they said, you didn't have any of that on your bio, Nicole. You told me your experience. You told me how you were gonna help me. And then I knew exactly what you specialize in. And from there, I was captivated. Because people say, how do you get all those followers? Put something on there that they get to learn, that they get to understand. And they like that kind of stuff. Or they may want to know how to increase their golf game and hang out with you playing golf and buy 2 houses. Or let me learn that new banana bread recipe that was hot during, our lockdown. Oh my gosh, she had the best recipe on there. Oh, she knows how to, she's like a awesome mixologist with drinks. Like that's the stuff people want.
well, they want personality in there. I think,
Exactly. They want to know when I get you, who am I really getting?
right. Well, there's that authenticity piece, and to what you were speaking about before, and I really agree with you. Like, there are agents, and a lot of agents will look up people's numbers, right?
Hmm.
And I used to be very much that way, and I used to be very concerned about it. And when I had my best year in real estate ever, and my team did close to 20 million in volume, and I made more money than I'd ever made in my life at that point. And
Yep.
I just was like, I was a disaster. And it wasn't because I necessarily like I saw people as a conquest, but it started to feel transactional because I kept being told by everyone you have to do more, 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 more.
Yes.
Because if you don't, you're not relevant. And I was so focused on thinking the better that I do and the more money that I make, the more I'll be able to do the things that I want to do. And instead, it was kind of like the exact opposite. Like, I
Yeah.
was so focused on work that I didn't get to do the things I wanted to do. But there are a lot of agents who they focus solely on that number piece, or it's so about their ego. Like I've seen people post, oh, I had this closing and I did this and did that, and I'm like this is a great example. There's an agent in Orlando who 1 year not long ago bought a very expensive car, and I can't say what it is because I'll give it away who it is, but it's a vehicle that I probably could have afforded myself, but I would never want to afford it because God forbid the market changed. Like, I'm not going to spend that much money on a car. And they were bragging about how great business was. And I'm like, I looked their numbers up, and like they literally did like a 16th of the amount of business that I did that year. And I was like, this is crazy. And
Yeah,
I don't
that's one
know.
of those I mean, and fake it till you make it isn't always that. It's more of present as if you are, handling some of the top real estate transactions and it may be your first. That's what fake it till you make it means to me. I think a lot of times we get caught up in it. It's social media driven too. So it drives a lot of angles of people and who they want to become and who they want to emulate. But it's just it's crazy.
Well, they lose the authenticity piece in the process.
Well, yeah,
I,
yeah,
I like
exactly.
I like the fake it until you make it thing, but I think what it really should be is, be the best version of yourself, right? Like
Absolutely,
dress for the job.
absolutely. Yeah, and when I meet brand new listing agents that never, done a transaction, I think leading sometimes with just being nice. I mean, people say it generically, but just being genuine and nice to someone on a multiple offer situation, because we're in high, homes are just in high demand in Orlando right now. And you can't get on a deal even before our lockdown. But to understand now, it's really about relationships. And those relationships actually landed me an acceptance of an offer on one of my deals.
I believe it.
And the agent told me, he said, "This is my first deal, and you made me feel like a professional." And I'm like, "I treat everybody like that. Why would I treat you? I had my first deal too." And it's like if we just lead with maybe a little bit more empathy at times, we may be better people and better professionals.
And that's what I think we need more out of this industry. Like I've faced a lot of judgment in the transition that I've
Hmm.
made, expanding into Atlanta, doing real estate coaching. And I just think people need to be nice. Like that's going to be the theme of 2021. Be nice.
Yeah, just being kind and also work hard. I think people kind of push that to the wayside, like, oh, every in real estate I hear a lot, oh, that's somebody else's job. It's like you represent a client, you represent a customer. It's your job, it's your business. And maybe sometimes the people that you work with in the group may not be on point, but it still lies on it's your responsibility. And I think if we work harder to understand different things within that transaction, connect to the people, whether it's title, buyers agents, listing agents, builders, having that relationship and rapport built is going to go ahead and benefit clients tenfold than somebody that just doesn't want to put the effort in.
Absolutely. I mean, there have been so many instances where you know, I've worked a deal and I'm on the listing side or representing the buyer, and I've had to do the work of the listing agent. But at the end of
Yes.
the day, like I didn't complain about it because it's about getting the job done. I was just kind of, I feel bad. I may probably sounded like a jerk to them, but I was kind of lecturing my Atlanta team a little bit about, when someone says no to you, like find a way to make it a yes. Like just make it
Yep.
work. So no matter what situation you're in, and we were talking about like open houses and not being able to get them right away, but in the case of maybe the other person who is not doing a great job, you need to do what you can to up your game and just get it done for everybody. Are there any people that you currently look up to, like in the social media world or on Instagram, who just run
Hmm.
really great businesses?
Oh my gosh, yes. Um, Kevin Sturtevant, and he goes by, I think it's at Kevion. He's with Case Real Estate.
Oh,
And
yes, I know who he is because people
by
were like,
far,
yeah,
by far is the person that wants to see what a good agent does, not just online. He's basically has his own show with his Instagram. And what he's showing you is all the components of being a leader and being a broker and his evolution, because he constantly goes back to where he was in the beginning to show an agent this is a process, but you can do it too. And bar none, photography, architectural design, just imagery, energy is always like so motivational. And he's just so current. And it's like, it's refreshing to go to his page and just get lost in it for a few hours. And he has a podcast too that is more so, I think, to help his agents, but other agents around the world listen to Kevin because he's just that good. And I really wish he would get on some of these more national platforms, but I think he's too much of the real deal that people like getting caught up in the fake stuff sometimes. That's easier. but putting in that work is what he's done, and he embodies it. So I think going to that core value and putting that work, hitting the pavement, because he does door knocking still right now.
Yeah, I remember someone sending me, because I'm obsessed with California. I'm sure at one
Hmm.
point in my life I will live there. But it was funny. I remember I was doing some branding work, and this was probably around like 2012, 13. And one of my friends, I don't know if you know Linda J from who works at Remax, um, but she's a good friend of mine, and she sent me. She's like, "Kase, someone stole your name. There's real estate," and she's like freaking out, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I went to his page, and I was like, "Oh, that's so cool!" Like, um,
Yep.
and yeah, he definitely, I know he does like a lot of, doesn't he do like a lot of surfing and stuff too? Like there was this very like beach
Yeah, he has that California vibe to it, but he was a he did skateboarding.
skater. That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah, skateboarding, and a lot of his business kind of generated from that. And then he connected to certain architectural design and communities, and people just like who he was and what he represented. And I mean, some of the things he gets is just not even normal. So that guy is one that I always been a go to look at before he was like the it agent to kind of be online, but he's the real deal.
I think everything you've shared today has been really great. And the main topic and the underlining piece that I'm hearing is it's really all about authenticity and how you're serving your client.
That's it. It's yeah. People want to complicate it. It's very simplistic.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. Well, Nicole, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. It's crazy how quick these conversations end up going by. But before
I
we,
know.
we sign off, how could people get in touch with you?
They can find me online at NicoleMickle.com, NicoleMickle.com. Instagram is I Orlando Real Estate, but my name can be searched on there as well. But I think going to the website will allow them to kind of see how I put things together, and just know that this was an evolution that's and morphed over years and years. And then just to kind of go to the Instagram, but our Orlando real estate, is my baby that I kind of show what I'm doing. I'm going to be better about posting a little bit more, but it's been a little crazy, so just bear with me a little bit.
No, you've been, I love your page because there's always such good content. And a lot of people I coach, I tell them to follow you because I think it's a good, even though,
Yeah, you've always been a huge supporter. Before everybody else was like, "You're not selling it on that. How many Zillow ads did you buy?" I'm like, "Never."
well, and at
And
one
there's
point,
nothing wrong with that either, because I feel like every business structure should be different for everybody. I
right.
don't knock anything.
And listen, I'm exactly the same way. And if anything, us talking about creating like our ideal businesses, I mean, that's really what it's about is, you know, be less focused on what everyone else is telling you to do,
Yeah,
like how much you should sell, and focus on the thing that feels good to you in your business. And I think that's why I've always liked supporting your stuff. Not to mention, it's really cool to look at. I love design, but I know there's so much more that went into your platform than just what you see. So that's what I think I appreciate about it the most. So
yeah. I'm happy to explain a little bit more, because when people come there, they don't get that story, because my clients don't want to know that story. They just want to know the information that they need.
that they need, yeah.
But it's nice to kind of explain the back end of it, because I think they'll get it a little bit faster. And I don't mind communicating with people for them to understand it.
For sure. Well,
Yep.
thank you again so much. I think this has been really awesome. Again, if you want to connect with Nicole, her website's NicoleMickle.com. And funny story, real quick. For the longest time, I kept using your last name incorrectly. Like I kind of merged your last name with Steve Urkel's last name. So in my phone, it says Nicole Merkel, and I don't know why or how. And it's so funny because I would like if I went to I don't like not that I Googled you all the time, but I remember there were times I had to write your name for whatever reason, like with marketing stuff for our old brokerage, and I would always spell it wrong. And I'm like, why? And then I would look at my phone and be like, well, because you put her name in your phone wrong. Uh,
Well, I would tell people is pickle with an M, and you'll remember it.
oh, I love that. Okay, well, cool. Well, yeah, so you could visit Nicole's website or on Instagram at
Yep,
I like yourself, Orlando Real Estate. So, anyway, Nicole, I hope you have a really great rest of your day, and I cannot wait to have you on here again soon.
absolutely. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Kase.
Thank you, Nicole.